Piccolos, this is a practice guide to Vivaldi's Concerto RV 443 in C major. I'm going to go over, of course, ways to practice the various difficult sections, but I'll also cover articulation options, ornamentation options, how to deal with the difficult breathing situations here and there, etc. So to get started, I'll just start right at the beginning and play this first bit, 4 or 5 lines, and then I'll go back and go over those things I mentioned. One of the main things in this whole piece, but at the beginning here, is articulation. I'm using the articulation that's in this particular edition for this beginning. Oh wait, I have a few changes. 25, taha taka taha taka. I think my edition just taha taka 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 taka. So I changed taha taka ta, slur 2, tongue 2 for that whole measure. And then, as is typical in the Baroque style that this is, there's always a pattern. So that pattern will come again at 27 and then again at 29. Whatever articulation you do, it needs to be consistent. It needs to be the same when you're going through a pattern. So I change a lot of the articulations, as most people do. And just a note on that, during the Baroque period, the composer often did not write in the articulations or dynamics. It was up to the performer to do those. Like this edition I'm reading off is Jean-Pierre Rampal. There's a bunch of different editions, and they put their own printed articulations, but they are totally changeable. So, like I said, they didn't write in dynamics either, sometimes a little bit, but it was typical to do what's called terraced dynamics. For example, if you have 2 identical measures, to do one loud and one soft. That's up to the performer, so you don't have to, but it's a nice style thing to do. At the beginning, I like to try to do it. It's difficult to do the first measure loud and the second measure soft. What I do to try to make my soft measure, my echo measure, sound softer in contrast to the first measure, is I make the first note of each of the 16ths shorter. So the first measure, ta-ta, 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 and then ta-ta, 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 just shorter, just so it sounds lighter, which gives the illusion that it's softer. Like that. So I like to do that through this first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 measures. Starting at measure 25, just know your lines. So again, the Baroque period, everything is a line. There's no melody per se. You're always starting from somewhere and going to somewhere. So starting at 25, be aware that you're going from there, taha taka taha taka taka taka, B flat, yad, and then 27, ya da 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 da, C, you're climbing, ya da 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 da, D, ya da, trill is your arrival. I've added a few ornaments, which is also part of the Baroque style. In measure 28, I just like to do a little mordant, just one trill on that A sharp. And then on the B, right before the C trill, I'm doing a turn, B, C, B, A, B, and then the trill, you start note above on these trills. That's the style of the Baroque period. So D and then C to D trill. So you don't have to do the turn. I just like to do that. But you could do... You do have to do the note above trill there. That'll be assumed and expected. Here, make sure you get a good breath and start soft and pace yourself. Ideally, go all the way until after the C trill here before you get a breath in. And again, no, it's a pattern, going along a pattern. C da 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 da, A da da da, F da 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 da, E da 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 da, D da 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 da, C, D, and then we climb back up. That's called the skeletal notes. then it resolves itself. But be aware of those steps that you're doing. Here, I'm using the articulation that's printed in this edition, ta-ta, ta-ta, ta. But I've heard it all kinds of different ways. You can do ta, ta-ta, ta, ta-ta, like slur to, tongue to. But again, whatever you do, it has to stay consistent through that whole, well, those 4 bars at least. Or some people do all tongue, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, all double tongued in there. So again, you gotta keep it the same, the 4 measures. And then the next 4 measures, you can change it to a different articulation if you want. Anyway, I'm doing tongue 1, slur 3 for those 4 bars going down. And then as I start my ascent back up, I'm switching it to slur 3, tongue 1. And then here, you could get the quickest of breaths if you really need, but it's better if you can just go straight on. Here you're starting a new line going from C up. So I would recommend to not be too loud here on the C. All right, trill didn't work. Some of these, like in my edition here, it has dots that I wouldn't do. Like right here, I wouldn't do. You want them more, I think, a little long because that's the continuous, the basso continuo. Ta, 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 pa, pa. That's the important part. Some of the difficulties in this first part here, little tricky in the fingers, is that EDE. It's just really easy to trip over yourself. I spent a lot of time just drilling it like in various ways. For instance, like that, and then or try to tongue it all. At measure 42, that last A, make sure it's longer than you think. It's easy to just do ba and have this short note. You need it longer so it sounds like a concerto, being more soloistic that way. With a little vibrato. This next section is the hardest thing ever for breathing and accuracy of the note centers coming out through all this articulation. Speaking of articulation, what I do, what's printed in mine, I would highly not recommend. Ron Paul put ta 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 ta. I don't know anybody who has ever done it that way. Other than Ron Paul, I guess. I mean, unless it works for you. Anyway, what the standard way most of us do, and what I'm doing is slur 2, tongue 2. Ta ta ta. Oh, and then tongue the rest of the measure. So, for instance, etc. all the way. You could alter that to slur 2, taha taka taha taka taha taka taha taka taha taka. But again, whatever you do, it needs to be the same all the way down through this pattern. And try to find the line, so it's just not it doesn't sound like an etude, or your mind's not thinking of it like an etude. You need to find some lines, because again, there's no melody. So you're kind of going somewhere. And I would often practice this section in this way. Like that, because it reinforces in my mind that the most important thing are the first 3 notes, ta 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 ta, and then the last 3 notes connect you to the next measure. Ya ta 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 ta. You really have to practice sections like this in a very detailed way, which is my most unfun way to practice, but paying attention to the notes that might be cracking, and because you're going for accuracy here, and go slow. You're just trying to get every note to speak. It's worth it really to go really slow and make sure all your notes speak. The other great way to practice, which is one of my favorites for anything with continuous 16th notes, is to do one group of 16th notes to the connecting note all the way through the whole pattern. etc. And just do that all the way down. And then you can just expand that to going all the way to beat 3. So let me talk about the breathing. People do all kinds of different things for breathing. What you don't want to do or try to do is get through the whole thing in one breath. Like, I'm sure there's somebody that can do it, but it sounds like a party trick and it sounds weird because we're human beings. We should not be able to play the whole thing in one breath. Unless you're like recorder players, yeah, they can play it down in one breath. Plus they're going faster and they're not using as much airspeed. What I do anyway is I breathe in measure 59 right here. I take out that F, because that's more or less the halfway point. And the other breath I take out is that last beat out in 63. So those are my 2 breathing spots, and that works for me. I used to, for many years, try to go all the way until measure 60, and I breathe somewhere. I think I breathe in this E right here or something. Anyway, that worked, but I was so out of breath by the time I got there that I could barely recover. It was not pretty coming out of it because I was just so out of breath. So in other words, don't put your breath mark. So you're going to have to take out a note to do a breath. There's no other way. But don't wait until you're completely depleted to plan your breath mark. The other thing is the idea of planning. Make sure you plan in advance and practice where you're taking your breath. Don't just leave it to chance, like wherever you happen to run out, you'll breathe there. That's never a good thing. Since it's so continuous, you can almost take out any note. Well, not any note. You don't want to take out the top ones because those are obvious. Ta ha ta ta. You could leave out a bottom note even because the accompaniment is going ba 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 just in quarter notes. So beats 1, 2, and 3 are covered. However, I would never take out beat 1 for a breath because that would just be weird. Like in measure 60, you could take out that bottom G because it's going to be covered in the piano part or the basso continuo, whatever your accompaniment is going to be. What I would do though, if you're playing this by yourself, like for an audition or something, and you're not playing with accompaniment, I would probably not take out beats 1, 2, or 3, like 2 or 3, and I would instead take out, like the second 16th note of beat 2 somewhere. Those are safe. And I just take out that last note in 63. I don't know how I just I could take out the second 16th note there, but I don't know. Anyway, you have a lot of freedom with what you want to do, where you want to breathe, and 2 breaths somewhere in here are the norm. That's what most people do that are playing it on piccolo. How I kind of approach this section is I breathe intentionally in measure, the measure before we start. Even if I'm playing it by myself, I am kind of thinking about those cues. Set. And on beat 3 there, I set my embouchure. That's just like my process or my plan. I keep coming to this word plan, and it's so important for a section like this, where it's just like constant 16th notes. And it's real easy for me anyway, for my mind to just sort of wander off or to lose my focus or whatever, because there's no melody. This reminds me, I had a lesson on this solo with Elise, what the heck's her last? Johnson, Elise Johnson, who's the piccolo player in Lyric in Chicago. And I played it down and I got tangled somewhere. I made my way out, but whatever. I just got a little tangled. Anyway, she said at the end of it, she said, "So what's your plan?" And I remember thinking, I don't know, hope for the best, like I had no plan. So it's really easy to get like tangled or get off a little bit because everything's so similar and there's no melody. And the plan is like, for instance, like the breathing plan that I mentioned, just to have that. So every time you do it, you're doing the same thing. I don't know why, but it's so helpful. It gives peace of mind, I think. So I'm not starting this out like, oh my God, I hope it works. You don't want that in your mind before you start this 4 lines of 16th notes. So yeah. I have it set and that's my plan. And I'm not thinking about anything other than that. The other thing about like the mental plan, sort of, I can't think of another word for it, but as I'm going through here, I have things I'm thinking about. At the beginning, I'm thinking very soft and just accurate and steady. So that's boring, but B. I kind of go to the B, and I might lean a little more on that second B here, and then I think a reset on this A, and then you're climbing from here, C, E, and I'm not like overly doing that with my dynamics, but I'm thinking about it in this way, E, and from here, for the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 measures, I'm trying to bring out the first 3 16th notes, E, C, A, and the rest is like D, A, F sharp, D, B, G. That's what I am intentionally thinking about. And then I've got my breath, C, and then from this C at 60, I'm thinking of coming back down. Well, because it's descending here, and I'm coming back down, C, B flat, A is my reset, starting soft to climb back up. A, B flat, C, D, E, F, and F is your arrival. I guess my main thing to try to get across is you need to be thinking about something with your lines. To go into this with like no thought or just thinking technique is not helpful, but you need to try to bring out the lines. And again, not like ya da 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 da. You don't want to be overdoing anything because there's no time for that. But if it's mentally in your head, it'll come out, and you can do a little of the phrasing, but very, very slight. Everything's very slight because it needs to stay kind of contained. Right there, I like to do, but it's totally optional. Be very careful with any crescendos you might want to do. You know, the patterns are climbing up or whatever. I think here, let the notes kind of do that. I wouldn't overly try to do crescendo because you've got to pace yourself out with your breath. The first notes of each measure will naturally sound louder as we go up. I wouldn't try to actively do a crescendo. It depends on how much breath you have left, but you want more than a crescendo. You want a feeling of the line going forward to an arrival place. Going to the Fs, I was just bringing out the first notes a little bit of each measure. And then here, it's just kind of a fun little thing, not much to say in there. However, I will say, you can kind of phrase it, however you do phrase it, it needs to be consistent because of the style of the Baroque style. So if you do that's fine, but it needs to be the same way through the 4 measures, or at least the first 3 measures. So you could do like, something like that, I don't know. Or a lot of recordings go like, just kind of dry. It doesn't matter what you do. I think it just, like I said, it has to be consistent. When you get to 71 though, almost everyone does like subito piano right here. A good way to practice this also is to play along with recordings. And nowadays, there seems to be good piccolo recordings out there. Many years ago, when I was practicing this more for auditions, there were only recordings out there on recorder, and they go so fast. All of them go so fast. So what I always like to do is play along with recordings. So I would play along, but sometimes I would have to just like white flag, like it's way too fast for me. But also with recorders, they're often playing with a Baroque orchestra setup and the pitch is really low. And so it's hard, the intonation is going to be way off. But anyway, recently there is an excellent recording by the piccolo player from Milwaukee Symphony, Jennifer Boughton Schaub. On the recording, I think it says Jennifer Boughton. I'll put it, here. She did this recently, and it's a really excellent recording. And there's another one by Peter oh, what's his name? Verhoeven or something like that. He has a recording on YouTube that is also very good. So I would recommend those two recordings. Moving on to the second page of this over here, I do the printed articulations in the edition I'm using. And I think this is pretty standard. Slur to ta taka ta taka 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 ta. So again, you could change it, but it needs to be the same. So if you want to do, I wouldn't do this, but if you wanted to do, then you need to also do, and, you know, it needs to be the same all the way. Anyway, I think this articulation is kind of standard and it's a good one. Also, all the trills need to start note above. And then after those 6 bars, that's a good breathing spot. Breathe there, get a good breath, and you start a new pattern, a new line. I change up the articulation here to try to do what's called the terrace dynamics. So here we have in measure 87 and 88, they are similar. To make 88 sound softer, because I'm trying to do loud, soft, loud, soft. To try to make the soft measure sound softer, I change the articulation. Like that. So for the first measure, ta taka ta taka ta taka, and then for my soft measure, ta 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 ta, just slightly changing the articulation. And in that measure, by the way, to make it easier, I leave my F key down for the A. F da ba da. It makes the A slightly flat, but you know, like I'm just like, who cares? I'd rather have it feel safer, like I'm not going to miss anything. 93, try to get a big breath as best you can and start soft, because ideally you want to go all the way until after measure 99 or so. And if you can't make it all the way, I'll go over some options for breathing in just a minute, but this is how ideally you would like to do it for breathing. You could, in 97, let's see, you can leave out that last B. At the measure 95, I just leave my F sharp key down, F sharp A, F sharp B, da 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 da. Feels a little more stable. In 98, it says trills, da, ya, da, da, ya, da, da, and I would like to do full trills. It can sound cool, but it's one of the trills I cannot get going very well. I think it's the B. I don't know. I could not get like maybe the B one to match all the rest of the trills, you know, like getting two trills in there. So I just, what I can do consistently for all of them is one trill. So Mordance it is. You know, you don't have to do just one trill like I'm doing, but if you're trying to do 2 trills on each one and one of them just doesn't match the rest of it, then you need to reconsider. Basically, they all need to match. You do have a lot of freedom to add little extra ornaments. That's the style. But again, I would listen to recordings to see what your options are if you're, you know, not sure what to do. What I'm doing in 100 is like that, just da ya da 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 da. This section at 111, here's where we need ornaments. Listening to recordings is really great. Some people really do a lot of flourishes, tons of ornaments, and some people do very minimal. I like the more minimal style. That's just a personal choice, but you can really, this is where you can get creative and come up with your own ornaments. Basically what you're doing is you can add trills wherever it seems. You can also add filler notes in between. You have like here, A to C, you can do ABC in there. It's just the main notes need to stay in the rhythm that they are. For instance, the first 2 measures, that always needs to be there no matter what decorations you put on. If you wanted to do ABC there, you can do that, but AC needs to be exactly still 1/8 notes apart. Like that. Or you could do No, that sounded weird. So you'll just experiment and like try trills or try filling in notes and like, you don't like this or you like that. And I'll just play it down how I do it. So I like to do a little bow at the end. If you're not sure about doing ornaments and you just want a few recommendations, what I would do for sure is a little trill on the C sharp here. Just one trill is fine. Definitely add that, it's something. And then you could also do the trill on 117. And you could add a little trill here. Or you could do G and fill in notes. G, A, B, C, that's kind of a nice one. Moving on, good breath here. This is another section where you're really pacing yourself and you may need to, do I take out a note? Yeah, I go the 2 lines and I take out that last G. Make sure whatever your breath plan is, make sure you practice it like that. I think I mentioned that before, but I just want to reiterate. So I'll go through it like how I do it with the breath. And then I'll go back and give some other options of notes to take out for other possible breath marks. I just take out that last G and then get a good breath coming in. If you need another option, a good one would be, let me just play and I'll see what maybe comes natural. Maybe that's C. Yeah, you could take out that C. So at 127, and then you can take out the D. Actually, that seems better than taking out my G I had. You don't have to do both, but you could. Anyway, so those are some options. Articulation. So I'm doing taka taka taha taka 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 taha taka 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 taha taka. So it's in different places and different measures, but like that. My printed one is ta 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 ta. That's really bizarre. I don't know. I guess that worked for Ron Paul, but I don't think I've heard anyone play it like that, so I would not recommend that. What's always safe if you have just a string of 16th notes is to do slur 2, tongue 2. That works for any occasion, kind of. This, to me, I just try to keep it accurate. It's kind of like that other section at measure 50. In my mind, I'm just trying to be accurate and soft, and I guess that's it. But also thinking of the lines without going outside of the piccolo tone, especially as the intervals expand, like here in measure 125 or so. You want to make sure your embouchure, your aperture does not open too much, or you're going to get spitty. And I try to bring out, or I shouldn't say bring out, but I'm aware as I'm playing interesting notes, or when the pattern changes. For instance, this B flat right here, which also brings me to the fingering. So in the measure before that, you don't have your thumb on, or it's on the long side all the way until then. And then for that B flat, I do 1 and 1, but as I'm doing 1 and 1, I'm also sliding so that I can keep my thumb over there for the rest of the next 2 measures. Because in measure 126 and 127, you don't want to be doing 1 and 1. You need your thumb on. Because of that, like having to slide, or I'm kind of sliding over in there, it takes like a split second longer. So I just kind of make a musical, artistic license a little bit to hold that B flat like a microsecond longer so I can get my thumb slid over. I mean, I do have this down also just in case. Trying to do that, just a little bit. And then, for instance, at the end of 127 to 128, you have B flat A. That's interesting. And also from 129 to 130, A G. Those bottom notes are sort of interesting. So again, you're thinking of the pattern and you're thinking of the line. These big intervals, like in 129, try not to open up your embouchure too much for like the low one, like, and then open for the, you know, close up for the top and open up. You just need like a general small aperture, I think, that's not tight. You don't want a death grip on it, but just small. And because you're playing very soft, right? I'm trying to play soft. I mean, it does sort of open up as you go down, but everything's much more minimal than how you would maybe even normally play on the piccolo. Lastly, at 132, what I do anyway is for the first 2 bars, I try to make my first low G's, ya da 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 da, more on the long side. And then here, I do those downbeats short, ya da 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 da, also to try to give the illusion that it's softer or just like, yeah, a little different. And right here, it's slowing down. Or it's never printed, but everyone does this. So ya da 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 ba da 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 trill with note above. So a trill, and the trill can be quasi fermata. And then a good breath, and this is like a little cadenza. So here you start slow, and then by measure 138, 39, by measure 139, it's a tempo there. Yada da 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 dum. And there in tempo. Yada da 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 da. Oh, I should have kept going. Anyway, you can do that. I think it's Jenny Boughton's recording. What she does with her articulation, which I really like, is she goes ka ta ka ta ka ta ka ta, and then she slurs, and then tongues and slurs. Make sure at the tempo, yeah, da, 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 you stay soft, and only just for breathing and the sense of the line. Stay soft. And I still stay soft, and here, then kind of open up. You could just do as printed, doing yada is so awkward for me, so I just changed it because we have the freedom to add in ornaments. So I use the ornament option to my advantage. So I like to do trill, and then starting on G, G, B, A, C, D, C, like that in slow motion. And last note, fairly long with a little vibrato there. And then at the end, you have the cues where it's tutti, meaning the whole orchestra plays. You can play along. I would never opt to do that because I'm exhausted. So it's optional. And it's also at the very beginning. Yeah, at the very beginning, tutti, the whole orchestra is playing. You could play along with the orchestra. I think it's safe to say almost no one does that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. I definitely would not play along at 42. No one does that. Okay, so I hope some of the things I went over was helpful. Please hit subscribe if you haven't already. I have lots of practice guides such as this, although all the other practice guides I've done are for orchestral pieces and some band pieces. So I've never done a concerto yet, so it's my first concerto. But anyway, I have a lot of an ongoing playlist, so you might want to check those out. Thanks for watching this video, and happy practicing.